Please, don't make me undress, she begged, but the cold millionaire had no choice. Hello everyone. Before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It is quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support truly means the world to us. Where are you watching from today? Please drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now, let us return to the main character. She is shivering when she says it, not loud, not dramatic, just a broken whisper that barely makes it past her lips. Please, do not make me undress. The room smells like antiseptic and cold metal. Fluorescent lights hum overhead, too bright for the hour, too sharp for how weak her body feels. She presses her arms tightly across her chest, fingers numb, knuckles pale, as if holding on to the thin layer of fabric is the only thing keeping her together. Her name is Elena, 26 years old, 5'4", 110 pounds on a good day. Tonight, far less than that, after hours of cold rain, shock, and blood loss. Her clothes are soaked through. Her skin is turning a dangerous shade of gray. Across from her stands Daniel Cross. The name alone carries weight in this hospital. Billionaire investor, owner of Cross Medical Group, the man whose signature decides budgets, equipment, and lives without ever stepping into an emergency room, until tonight. He is tall, broad-shouldered, dressed in a dark coat that has not yet been removed. His face is carved from control, no panic, no softness, just sharp eyes calculating time, temperature, and survival. The monitor beside Elena beeps slowly, too slowly. Daniel does not raise his voice. He does not step closer than necessary. When he speaks, his tone is even, professional, and terrifyingly calm. "You are hypothermic," he says. "Your core temperature is dropping. Wet clothes will kill you faster than the injury." Elena shakes her head weakly. Her teeth chatter. Her breath comes out in short, shallow gasps. "Please," she whispers again. I cannot do this." This is not modesty, this is fear. Daniel sees it immediately. The way her eyes avoid his, the way her shoulders curl inward, protecting something far deeper than skin. He has seen this before, not in boardrooms, not in balance sheets, but in hospital rooms, years ago, when hesitation cost a life. He turns his head slightly, signaling to the nurse to step back. He removes his gloves slowly, deliberately, and places them on the stainless steel tray. "I will not look at you," he says, "but I cannot allow you to die." Elena's vision blurs. Tears slide down her temples and disappear into her hair. She wants to believe him. She wants to trust the man whose eyes feel colder than the room itself. But trust is a luxury she learned she could not afford. Daniel exhales once, a controlled breath, a decision already made. There is no cruelty in his movements, no rush, no unnecessary touch. Everything he does is precise, clinical, and restrained. He turns away, instructs the nurse quietly, and focuses on the readings instead of the woman trembling on the bed behind him. The seconds stretch. Then, slowly, the numbers begin to stabilize. Elena does not know it yet, but she has just survived the most dangerous moment of her life. And Daniel Cross, the coldest man she has ever met, has just crossed a line he swore he never would again. Because sometimes, healing begins with a choice that feels unforgivable in the moment. And sometimes, the man who saves you is the one who looks the least capable of kindness. Elena wakes slowly, not all at once, but in fragments. A steady beeping sound. Warmth where there was once only cold. The weight of blankets resting over her shoulders, heavier than they look, grounding her in the present. Her first instinct is fear. She tightens her fingers, expecting damp fabric, bare skin, that familiar rush of panic. But instead she feels cotton, dry, clean. A hospital gown properly secured, layered beneath thermal sheets. She exhales, a shaky breath she did not realize she was holding. The room is dimmer now. Night has settled outside the narrow window, the city lights blurred by rain. The fluorescent glare from earlier has been softened, replaced by low wall lamps meant for recovery, not emergencies. Elena turns her head slightly. Daniel Cross is still there. He is seated several feet away, not at her bedside, but near the monitor, arms folded loosely, eyes focused on the screen as if it were the only thing keeping him anchored. His coat is gone. His sleeves are rolled neatly to his forearms. He looks less like a billionaire now, and more like a man who has not moved in hours. Their eyes meet. He stands immediately. "You are stable," he says. "Your temperature is rising. You are safe." No softness, no apology, just facts. Elena swallows. Her throat is dry. When she speaks, her voice is barely audible. "Did I say anything?" Daniel shakes his head. "No. That is not entirely true, but it is the truth that matters." A nurse enters quietly, checks Elena's vitals, adjusts the drip, and offers her water through a straw. The routine is gentle, practiced, almost tender. Elena drinks slowly, every movement measured, as if her body is still deciding whether it can trust the world again. When the nurse leaves, silence returns. It is not awkward, it is heavy. "I am sorry," Elena says suddenly. Daniel looks at her, surprised. "For what?" "For being difficult." Her eyes flicker away. "I know you were trying to help." He does not answer right away. "You were not difficult," he says finally. "You were afraid. That is not the same thing." Something shifts in her chest at that. Not relief, something quieter. Minutes pass. The monitor continues its steady rhythm. Elena's breathing evens out. "You did not look at me," she says. Daniel's jaw tightens, almost imperceptibly. "I said I would not." "No," she continues. "I mean, you really did not." He nods once. "That mattered," she says. For the first time, Daniel looks away. Elena studies him now, really studies him. The lines around his eyes, the exhaustion he has not bothered to hide. This man is not cold because he does not care. He is cold because caring once cost him something he never got back. "You did not have to stay," she says. "Yes," he replies. "I did." That answer confuses her more than silence would have. Over the next hours, time slows. Elena drips in and out of sleep. Each time she wakes, something small reassures her. The blankets are adjusted. The water is replaced. The room remains calm. Daniel never touches her again, but he never leaves. At one point, Elena wakes to the sound of quiet conversation outside her door. A doctor speaking in hushed tones. Words like exposure, recovery window, and lucky appear briefly before fading away. Lucky. Elena does not feel lucky. She feels changed. Near dawn, Daniel finally stands. "I will have someone check on you shortly," he says. "If you need anything, press the call button." He turns to leave, then stops. "I made the right decision," he adds without looking at her. "But that does not mean it did not cost you something." Elena's eyes burn. He pauses at the door, waiting. "You saved my life," she says. Daniel nods once. Then he leaves. Elena stares at the closed door long after he is gone, realizing something she is not ready to name yet. Healing did not begin when her body warmed. It began when someone chose her survival without taking her dignity. And she has the strange feeling that this is only the beginning. Elena spends 3 days in the hospital, not because her injuries demand it, but because her body needs time to remember what safety feels like. The doctors explain it carefully. Exposure takes more than warmth to undo. Shock lingers. Muscles weaken. The mind holds on longer than the skin. Daniel Cross does not visit during the day. She notices that first. During daylight hours, nurses come and go. Physical therapy checks her balance. A social worker asks gentle questions about where she was found, whether she has someone to call, whether she feels safe going back. Elena answers honestly. "No family nearby. Yes, I was alone. I will manage." But every night, just after the hallway quiets and the city outside dims into a field of distant lights, he returns. Always the same time, always the same distance from her bed. He never sits beside her. He never asks personal questions. He reviews her chart with the on-call physician, listens, nods, and stays until her breathing deepens into sleep. On the second night, Elena finally speaks first. "You own this hospital, do not you?" Daniel does not pretend otherwise. "I do." The word billionaire is never said out loud. It does not need to be. "Then why are you here?" she asks. He considers that longer than she expects. "Because I made the decision," he says. And decisions do not end when the crisis does. She watches him closely. Most men with power explain themselves. He does not. He simply states facts, as if they are obligations he has already accepted. On the third day, Elena is allowed to shower on her own. The nurse helps her walk to the bathroom, steady but weak. The mirror surprises her. pale skin, faint bruising along her ribs, healing stitches where the rain-soaked pavement cut too deep. She does not cry. Later, when Daniel arrives, she is sitting upright, wrapped in a cardigan provided by the hospital, her hair still damp. "You look stronger," he says. "I feel clearer," she replies. "There is a difference." He nods once, as if that matters. "You will be discharged tomorrow," he says. "Transportation will be arranged." She hesitates. "I did not ask for that." "No," he agrees. "But you need it." Elena studies him. "You do not like being thanked, do you?" A pause. "Gratitude creates imbalance," he says. "I prefer responsibility." That answers more than he realizes. That night, Elena cannot sleep. Her body is warm, but her thoughts are restless. She keeps replaying the moment she begged him not to make her undress. The terror, the humiliation she feared, the dignity he protected without asking for credit. Near midnight, she presses the call button, then releases it without using it. Instead, she waits. Daniel appears shortly after, as if he sensed the shift in her breathing. "I am not in pain," she says quickly. "I just wanted to ask something." He waits. "Why were you so certain," she asks, "that you could make that call and live with it?" His eyes darken. The answer is not simple. "Because once," he says slowly, "I chose hesitation. I wanted to be gentle, respectful, and someone died because of it." The room feels smaller. "I do not allow myself that mistake anymore." Elena absorbs that quietly. "So you carry it instead," she says. "The weight." "Yes." She nods. "Then maybe this time it did not only cost." Daniel looks at her, truly looks at her, for the first time without distance. The next morning, Elena is discharged. Daniel arranges temporary housing near the hospital. No contracts, no obligations, just time, space, choice. When she steps outside, the air is crisp and dry. The city looks different when you have almost lost it. Daniel walks her to the car, then stops. "You owe me nothing," he says, "but if you wish to speak again, you may." He hands her a card, not a business one, a simple number, no title. Elena takes it. As the car pulls away, she looks back once. Daniel Cross is still standing there, hands in his pockets, watching until she disappears from view. For the first time, Elena understands something with absolute clarity. Healing is not about being saved. It is about being seen, respected, and given the chance to choose what comes next. And her story with him is far from over. Elena moves into the temporary apartment the same afternoon she is discharged. It is small, clean, and quiet. One bedroom, one window facing a side street lined with trees just beginning to change color. The hospital shuttle leaves her at the curb, and for a moment she simply stands there, keys cold in her palm, unsure why her chest feels tight. This place is safe, and safety, she is learning, can feel unfamiliar. The first night alone is the hardest, not because she is afraid of the dark, but because there is no monitor beeping softly nearby, no footsteps in the hallway, no silent figure seated a few feet away, keeping watch without claiming ownership. She sleeps lightly. The days that follow settle into a careful routine. Follow-up appointments, physical therapy twice a week, paperwork with the social worker who explains, gently but clearly, that all medical expenses have already been covered. "Elena," the woman says, "this was approved at the highest level." Elena already knows who that means. She does not call Daniel, not because she does not want to, but because she needs to know whether his presence was part of the crisis or part of something deeper. Healing, she reminds herself, requires honesty. On the fifth day, the knock comes. 3 short taps, controlled, familiar. Elena opens the door slowly. Daniel Cross stands in the hallway, dressed simply. No suit, no driver, just a dark sweater, jeans, and the same unreadable expression she remembers from the hospital. "I was in the area," he says. That is not true, but it is not a lie meant to manipulate. It is an offering, an opening. "You can come in," she says. He steps inside, glancing around with professional detachment. He does not comment on the apartment. He does not make it feel temporary or charitable. "How are you feeling?" he asks. "Stronger," she replies. still tired. That is expected. They stand there, uncertain, until Elena gestures toward the small table. He sits across from her, leaving space between them. "I did not thank you properly," she says. "I told you that was not required." "I know," she says, "but I need to say it anyway." Daniel watches her carefully. He does not interrupt. "What you did," she continues, "you did not just save my life. You showed me that care does not have to take something from me." Silence follows, heavy, but not uncomfortable. Daniel looks down at his hands. "I am not good at reassurance." "I am not asking for reassurance," Elena says, "only acknowledgement." He nods slowly. "There are rules I live by," he says. "They keep me functional, detached. That night, I followed them. But afterward, I realized something." She waits. "I do not want to be a man who only shows up in emergencies." The admission lands quietly, but it changes the room. Elena studies him, the cold billionaire, the man who commands entire systems with a signature. Sitting here, uncertain, exposed in a way no boardroom ever required. "Neither do I," she says softly. "I do not want to live only in survival mode." That is the moment something shifts. They do not reach for each other. They do not promise anything. Instead, they talk. About small things. About her work before the accident. About his early years building Cross Medical Group, long before the money insulated him from consequences. "I lost someone," he says eventually, "in a hospital much like the one you were in. I learned to choose decisively after that, but I forgot how to stay." Elena nods. "And I learned to disappear to stay safe." They sit with that truth. When Daniel stands to leave, he hesitates at the door. "I will not intrude," he says, "but if you wish, we can speak again, as equals." Elena meets his gaze. "Yes," she says, "I would like that." After he leaves, Elena closes the door and leans against it, breathing steadily. This time, her heart is not racing from fear. It is responding to something new. Not rescue, not obligation, but the slow, deliberate beginning of trust. And for the first time since the night that nearly ended everything, Elena feels something unexpected take root. Hope. Elena and Daniel begin meeting once a week. Not with labels, not with expectations. Just coffee, always in quiet places where no one recognizes him and no one asks questions about her. A corner cafe near the river. A bookstore with a second floor that smells like paper and dust. Places where time moves slowly enough to notice small things. At first, they talk about neutral ground. Her recovery, his work. The way the city feels different when you walk instead of drive. Daniel listens more than he speaks. Elena notices that when he does speak, his words are careful, chosen, as if he is learning a new language. One afternoon, weeks later, Daniel asks a question he has avoided. "Do you remember the night you were brought in?" he says. Elena pauses. She has learned not to rush answers. "Yes," she says, "but it no longer owns me." He nods. Good. That answer matters more to him than she realizes. The shift comes quietly. It happens the day Elena receives a call from the hospital. There has been an internal review. Questions about the circumstances of her admission. Why a non-medical executive was present during a critical intervention. Why procedures were overridden. Elena listens calmly. "They want a statement," the administrator says. "Your experience, your perspective." Elena hangs up and sits very still. That evening, she tells Daniel everything. He does not interrupt. He does not defend himself. When she finishes, he nods once. "I expected this," he says. "I will cooperate fully." "They might try to frame it as misconduct," Elena says. "Yes," he replies, "and I will accept that if necessary." She looks at him sharply. "You saved my life. That does not place me above accountability," he says. "It never should." The hearing is scheduled 2 weeks later. Elena attends by choice. The room is formal, polished wood, neutral faces. Daniel sits at the far end of the table, composed, hands folded. He does not look at her for reassurance. When Elena is asked to speak, she stands. Her voice does not shake. She tells them about the cold, the fear, the moment she begged him not to make her undress. And then she tells them what matters most. "He protected my dignity when it would have been easier not to," she says. "He turned away. He gave instructions without claiming control. He stayed after, when there was nothing left to gain. The room is silent. This was not abuse of power, Elena continues. This was responsibility. When it is over, the board deliberates privately. Daniel waits alone. Elena finds him standing by a window, staring out at the city he built, but never truly lived in. Whatever happens, she says, I would make the same statement again. He turns to her. For the first time since they met, there is no armor in his expression. Thank you, he says. The decision comes the next morning. No sanctions, no reprimand. Instead, a recommendation. Daniel is asked to formalize new patient dignity protocols across all cross-medical facilities. Mandatory training, clear boundaries, independent oversight. He accepts without hesitation. Weeks later, Elena attends the announcement. Daniel speaks briefly. He credits the process, the staff, and the patient who reminded him that healing is not only clinical. He does not say her name. He does not need to. That evening, they walk together along the river. I used to believe control was the same as safety, Daniel says. You showed me it is not. Elena smiles softly. And you showed me that care does not have to cost me myself. They stop walking. This time, when he reaches for her hand, he waits. Elena places her hand in his. The gesture is simple, earned, chosen. This is not a rescue story. It is the story of two people who survived different kinds of cold and learned, together, how warmth is built, slowly, honestly, and without taking anything that was not freely given. Elena's strength returns gradually, not all at once. It shows up in small, ordinary moments, walking farther without needing to rest, laughing without feeling guilty for surviving, sleeping through the night without waking to the memory of cold rain on her skin. Daniel notices all of it. He never comments on her body, never measures progress like a project. He notices the way her posture changes, the way her voice steadies, the way she no longer flinches when someone moves too quickly nearby. Their meetings become more natural. Sometimes it is coffee. Sometimes it is dinner at a quiet place where the lights are low and the tables are spaced far apart. Sometimes it is simply walking, side by side, saying nothing at all. Daniel begins to share pieces of himself he has never offered anyone. Not his wealth, not his accomplishments, his failures. I used to think distance made me fair, he says one evening as they sit on a park bench overlooking the river. If I did not get close, I could not be accused of favoritism or weakness. And now, Elena asks, now I see distance only protects the person who creates it. She nods. That truth feels familiar. One afternoon, Elena receives an email from Cross Medical Group, an offer, a position in a new patient advocacy program, part-time, paid, flexible, no obligation to accept. She reads it twice, then closes her laptop. That evening, she tells Daniel, I do not want special treatment, she says immediately. If this is because of us, I cannot take it. Daniel listens carefully. It is not because of us, he says. It is because you understand something most systems forget, that dignity is not optional. Elena considers that. Then let me apply like everyone else, she says. A pause. Daniel smiles. Not the controlled expression he wears in public, but something quieter, genuine. I would expect nothing less, he says. Weeks pass. Elena interviews with a panel she has never met. She speaks honestly about fear, recovery, and the importance of choice. When the offer is extended again, it comes from someone else. Official, clean. She accepts. The work grounds her. She listens to patients who feel unseen. She helps translate policies into human language. She advocates for people who are too tired or frightened to advocate for themselves. Daniel watches her step into this role with a mix of admiration and restraint. One night, as they stand in her apartment kitchen, the city humming softly outside, he says what he has been holding back. I am afraid, he admits. Elena looks at him. Of losing control, he continues. Of wanting something that cannot be managed. She steps closer, not touching him yet. I am afraid too, she says, of being needed instead of chosen. The air between them changes. Daniel lifts his hand, then stops. May I? He asks. Elena nods. When he touches her, it is gentle, a hand resting lightly at her waist. No pressure, no claim, just presence. She places her hand over his. This is different from survival, different from rescue. This is consent, built slowly, carefully, on weeks of trust. They do not rush. They talk. They pause. They learn each other's rhythms. For Daniel, intimacy is unfamiliar territory. For Elena, safety is something she is still practicing. They respect both. Later, as they sit together on the couch, Elena resting against him, Daniel speaks softly. "I have spent my life making decisions for others," he says. "I do not want to do that here." "Then do not," she replies. "Walk with me instead." He nods. Outside, the city continues its restless movement. Inside, something steadier takes hold. This is not passion built on urgency. It is connection built on patience. Two people, once defined by cold in very different ways, choosing warmth without fear. And both of them know, without saying it, that healing is no longer something that happens to them. It is something they are actively creating, together. The first sign that something is wrong arrives quietly. An email, short, carefully worded, sent to Elena's new work address late at night. It thanks her for her dedication to patient dignity. Then it asks a question that does not belong. "Did you know Mr. Cross was not supposed to be at the hospital that night?" Elena reads it twice. Her chest tightens, not with fear, but with recognition. This is not concern. This is provocation. She does not respond. The next day, Daniel notices the change in her immediately. The way she holds her shoulders. The way her eyes stay alert, even during simple conversation. "What happened?" he asks. She shows him the email. Daniel's expression does not change, but something behind his eyes does. Focus sharpens. Old instincts surface. "It has started," he says quietly. Elena looks at him. "What has?" Daniel exhales slowly. "The night you were admitted was not just unfortunate timing. There were internal irregularities, missing approvals, delayed responses. I was already reviewing them before your case forced everything into the open." He pauses. Someone did not want the system to work. Elena feels the weight of that settle in her body. "You think I was collateral?" she says. "No," Daniel replies firmly. "I think you were a test." The days that follow confirm his suspicion. Documents are requested, logs reviewed. A pattern emerges. Not dramatic, not obvious, but consistent. Delays that affect the most vulnerable patients. Budget reallocations that quietly weaken emergency response in specific districts. Daniel shares everything with Elena, not as protection, but as respect. "This is not something I can shield you from," he says, "and I will not decide for you." She nods. Then we face it with clarity. Together they begin to dig, not like lovers, like partners. Elena speaks to patients, listens to stories that mirror her own. People who waited too long, people who felt unseen, people whose outcomes depended on invisible decisions made far above their heads. Daniel traces the money. The answer leads to one name, Nathan Cross, his half-brother, the man who sits on the board, who argues relentlessly for efficiency, who believes compassion is a liability disguised as virtue. Nathan does not hide his disdain. "You are letting emotion dictate infrastructure," he tells Daniel during a tense meeting. "That makes you predictable." Daniel does not raise his voice. "And you are letting profit dictate survival. That makes you dangerous." The board is divided. Pressure mounts. Anonymous complaints are filed against Elena's department. Her role is questioned. Her proximity to Daniel is scrutinized. One afternoon, she is called into a private office. They suggest she step back, take a leave, protect herself. Elena walks out without agreeing. That night, she sits across from Daniel in his apartment, the city stretched below them like a living organism. "They are trying to isolate you," she says. "They always do," he replies. "And me?" He looks at her carefully. "They will try to make you small." She meets his gaze. "Then they do not understand who I am anymore." Daniel reaches for her hand, then stops, waiting. She places her hand in his. "This ends with the truth," she says, "not with silence." Daniel nods. Then we proceed. The next morning, he initiates a full independent audit. External investigators, public transparency, no exceptions. The response is immediate. Legal threats, media whispers. A story begins to form, one that frames Daniel as compromised and Elena as the reason. For the first time since they met, Elena feels fear creep back in, but it does not root itself, because this time, she is not alone, and she is not powerless. She stands beside Daniel as he addresses the board, the staff, and the press. He does not defend himself. He presents facts. Elena watches him speak, calm and unyielding, and realizes something profound. The cold man who once saved her life without looking at her is now willing to risk everything by standing fully seen. And she knows with absolute certainty that whatever comes next will not break them. Because healing, once chosen, does not retreat when tested. It proves itself. The investigation does not end quietly. It cannot. Once the independent audit begins, everything accelerates. Timelines collapse. Conversations that once happened behind closed doors spill into daylight. Numbers turn into narratives, and narratives demand accountability. Elena feels it first in the hospital halls. Staff members who once looked past her now stop to speak. Some thank her, others warn her. A few simply watch, measuring which side of the truth will win. Daniel feels it everywhere else. Board meetings stretch late into the night. Legal teams flood his inbox. Nathan Cross fights aggressively, publicly calm and privately furious. He frames the audit as betrayal, as weakness, as a man sacrificing stability for sentiment. "You are dismantling what we built," Nathan tells him during a final confrontation. For one patient, Daniel meets his gaze. For every patient we failed when we chose comfort over courage. The evidence is undeniable. Diverted funds, deliberate understaffing in high-risk districts, emergency response delays justified on spreadsheets and buried in language designed to sound neutral. The truth is not dramatic. It is worse. It is systemic. When the findings are released, the reaction is immediate. Nathan is removed from the board pending legal action. Several senior executives resign within hours. Public trust fractures, then slowly begins to rebuild. Daniel does not celebrate. Instead, he does something unexpected. He steps down as interim chair and appoints an external ethics council to oversee implementation of reforms. Independent, transparent, uncontrolled by his name. Elena watches the announcement live from her office. Her hands tremble, not with fear, but with the weight of what it cost him to do this. That night, Daniel comes to her apartment. He does not knock. She opens the door before he can. They stand there for a long moment, absorbing what has ended and what has begun. "I may lose everything I built," he says quietly. Elena shakes her head. "No, you are choosing to build something different." He steps inside, exhaustion written across every line of his face. "For the first time," he says, "I am not sure who I will be after this." Elena takes his hands, steady, present. "Then let us find out together," she says. This time, when they hold each other, there is no hesitation, no fear of imbalance, no question of consent. Their closeness is calm, grounded, earned through shared truth rather than adrenaline. Later, as dawn approaches, Daniel speaks into the quiet. "I was taught that leadership meant distance," he says, "that love compromised clarity." Elena rests her head against his shoulder. "And I was taught that survival meant silence." They sit with that. "What if leadership is listening?" she asks. "And love is accountability?" Daniel closes his eyes. In that moment, the cold that once defined him finally releases its grip. Weeks later, Elena stands beside him at a press conference. Not as a symbol, not as a survivor on display, but as a professional, introduced by title and role. Patient advocate, systems consultant. She speaks briefly. "This is not a story about one night," she says. "It is a story about what happens after, when we choose to face harm instead of hiding it." Daniel watches her, and the pride he feels has nothing to do with ownership. It has everything to do with respect. As the cameras turn away and the room empties, Elena reaches for his hand. "Whatever comes next," she says, "we choose it." Daniel nods. For the first time in his life, uncertainty does not feel like failure. It feels like freedom. And both of them know they are standing at the edge of something that is no longer about healing alone. It is about transformation. The city settles into a quieter rhythm as autumn deepens. Change is visible now, not only in headlines or policy updates, but in the way the hospitals operate. Emergency departments are fully staffed again. Patient advocates are present on every floor. Dignity protocols are no longer optional language in a handbook, but practice standards, reinforced daily. Elena walks through one of the Cross medical facilities with steady steps. She no longer feels like a visitor in these halls. She belongs here, not because of who she knows, but because of what she does. Patients recognize her now, not by name, but by presence, by the way she listens, by the way she waits until they finish speaking. Daniel watches her from a distance, careful not to intrude. His life looks different too. Without the constant armor of control, his days are quieter. Meetings are fewer, decisions are slower, more deliberate. For the first time, he allows himself to be advised instead of obeyed. One evening, months after the audit concludes, Daniel asks Elena to walk with him. Not to a restaurant, not to an event, to the river. The same stretch of water where they once walked in silence, uncertain of what they were becoming. The air is crisp. The lights reflect softly across the surface, broken but beautiful. "I have something to ask you," Daniel says. Elena stops walking. She turns to face him, reading his expression carefully. There is no anxiety there, no urgency, only intention. "I am not asking to save you," he continues, "and I am not asking you to follow me." She waits. "I am asking if you would choose me," he says. "Not as a protector, not as a provider, but as a partner, in a life we continue to build deliberately." He takes a breath. "I will not promise perfection, only honesty, accountability, and presence." Elena feels warmth rise in her chest, steady and calm. She thinks of the night she begged him not to make her undress, the fear, the powerlessness, the cold. Then she thinks of everything that followed, the respect, the patience, the way he never once crossed a boundary without asking. "Yes," she says, "I choose you." Daniel does not kneel. He does not rush. He takes her hands in his, grounding himself in the moment. "I love you," he says simply. Elena smiles, tears gathering, not from pain, but from release. "I know," she replies, "because you showed me before you ever said it." They stand there together, watching the river move forward without resistance. Weeks later, life continues. They do not announce anything publicly. They do not need to. But in quiet ways, their commitment becomes visible. A shared home chosen together. Walls filled slowly. No excess. No urgency. Daniel attends Elena's community meetings, sitting in the back, listening. Elena reviews Daniel's ethics proposals, challenging him without hesitation. They are equals. One morning, as sunlight spills across their kitchen, Elena pauses, coffee mug warming her hands. "Do you ever think about that night?" she asks. Daniel nods. "Every day." "And does it still hurt?" He considers. "No," he says. "It reminds me why I changed." Elena reaches for him. "This story could have ended very differently," she says. "Yes," he agrees. "But it did not, because someone trusted me to act, and someone else trusted herself to survive." They stand there, holding each other, grounded in something real. This is not a fairy tale. It is not about wealth saving vulnerability. It is about two people who refused to let trauma define them, and chose instead to let accountability, respect, and love guide what came next. Sometimes healing begins in the harshest moments, but when it is honored, protected, and allowed to grow, it becomes something stronger than survival. It becomes a future, and Elena and Daniel step into it together, not because fate demanded it, but because they chose it.